Hey everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama. Welcome to our podcast.
Today we're covering two films from Pixar, which is Monsters, Inc. and its prequel, Monsters University.
Now the first film shows us a world where monsters scare children to power their city. And when a little girl named Boo accidentally comes into the world, Mike and Sulley must return her home. Then in the second film, we're shown the college life or university life of Mike and Sulley. And they became friends, done in the style of an 80s college.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to make it. Now, before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get updates on future podcasts and Roll to Pause videos.
And I'm not sure what took us so long to actually cover both of these movies, because you got Monsters, Inc. when you were very little as a gift from a neighbor, and I know at least 100 times we've seen that movie. I stopped counting after 100. Every day for months you had to see Monster Inc. So you should know every line. You should know what happens from beginning to end, and backwards as well. If you play it backwards, you should be able to do the dialogue as well.
Right.
But it's a really fun movie and a really great franchise that unfortunately stopped after the second movie.
Yeah. Yep. Now here, this movie came out in 2001. Cannot believe that it's really this old, and it's still really a timeless movie. And when you think of the concept of it, this is a little bit before Disney had a lot more input for the Pixar movies. Usually it was just Pixar when they had Toy Story, and then they had this one. That's when Disney said, okay, we really want in on this. For here, it was a really interesting and fun little concept that you never really heard of before prior to now. You probably heard of shows about monsters or monsters. Well, we got monsters in high school, we got monsters under the bed, we got
Boogeyman,
right,
the Sandman,
right, the Universal monsters and all types. But a movie where the
and Supernatural, the monster in the closet that John gave them a gun and told Sam just shoot it.
But the concept here is that when they scare kids, they say in the trailer, it's nothing personal, it's just their jobs. So then when they scare the kids, it's power for their city. So they have a whole company based around just going around the world scaring kids and then using the screams to power everything.
And as you mentioned, it was a totally new concept. It's never been done before, and the box office proved that people actually loved it. The budget for the movie was $115 million, and it grossed over $677 million.
Yep.
It grossed almost $1 billion back in 2001. Before Marvel started having billion-dollar movies every movie. So this really was a fantastic feat in 2001.
Right.
And that also showed the world that people love animation, and people love animated movies, and people wanted more.
And when you see the film itself, like I said, there's a stark difference between this movie and Monsters University, besides, the whole theme of it. This one just had this little trope of, getting something back where it didn't belong. And for here it was Boo being the monster's world. It looked like someone left the door open and she got out. And the thing was that the monster was scared of kids. They thought humans were toxic. If you touched them, you explode.
Which is brilliant. It was brilliant.
Yeah, if you get touched by a kid, you'll be toxic, you're infected or something. You gotta be quarantined and everything. So probably now they can say that. But for then, it was hilarious that they were this scared of kids and like they were harmless. And throughout the movie, you see that, they're scared of Boo, and you see that they slowly realize that she's not a threat, and she's just a little kid. Like, when they have kids, they're little monsters there that act like human kids, and there's really no difference. There was no danger.
I love how they had this as any business and entrepreneurship going. They had the shifts and the changing. They had the blue-collar monsters, the white-collar monsters, the corporate monsters. And, of course, they had brilliant Steve Buscemi as Randall. And he was the villain element in the whole movie, which is hilarious when you think about it. Just him being underhanded and wanting to sabotage their success was the worst that you got in this movie. So there was no darkness. And it was Monsters, Inc. So, again, as you mentioned, it was absolutely brilliant.
Right. And it's so many iconic moments from it, especially the one thing everyone remembers is, put the thing where it came from, or so help me! Which they end up having to turn into an actual play because they lied so badly. And seeing this, you know, it's just a really, really fun movie that everyone can see. There's no, like, hidden undertones or anything. There's no death of a character or a parent or the things you usually see in the Disney movies nowadays. It's just a really fun, hilarious animated film. Now, and then when the movie ended on a really sweet note, people thought that there was a sequel coming at some point. But like The Incredibles, it took forever for anything related to it to come out. Now, granted, The Incredibles came out in 2019, right? 2019 finally with a movie. And then they finally announced, okay, we're getting another Monsters Inc. movie. But then they said Monsters University. And people were kind of like, okay, so I guess they're going to like a school of monsters. Right. And then it said a prequel. And they're like, no, we want a sequel. We want to see what happened to Boo. And do more humans find out about the monster world. And that's completely never mentioned at all in the movie because it goes so far back. Instead, Monster University shows the origin of how Sulley and Mike became friends, but they also have started off with the, they couldn't stand each other, and then they learned to become friends. You got the little new kid nerd trying to achieve his dreams, and no one wants to be around him because he's not scary. That's pretty much the equivalent of being a genius for here, and you're the uncool one. What made him, Mike, uncool is that he wasn't scary looking. He wanted to be a scarer, but he wasn't terrifying or anything. He looked like just he was a little green eyeball. It was nothing to do with that.
I think each movie had its merits. The first one, of course, as we mentioned, gave us a concept we've never seen. It also employed some comedy giants, John Goodman and Billy Crystal. Yeah. You had a legendary actor, James Coburn, who are now loved and who have been in many, many westerns and army movies and such movies as the owner, as the guy in charge, and he was brilliant. And then you had your regular arc, you had your, what was not a trope at that time, you had your turn of events and reveal of someone who you didn't think was the enemy as the enemy versus Randall, who you thought was the enemy, but he really wasn't. He was just a bad sportsmanship. And you had the conclusion of the problem being resolved. Then you get Monsters University. And for me, I kind of see why they didn't do a sequel, because everything was neatly wrapped up with a bow and done. And you know everything there is to know about the monsters, and you know why they do what they do and how they do it and what they believe. And now they know the truth. Their children aren't disease-ridden carriers and so forth.
Right.
So all the things that in the movie were not true have been proven, that were not true have been proven untrue. And all the truths have been proven. And so all that's being wrapped up. So a prequel lets you know, as you mentioned, how they became friends, how Monsters U started, what started. I like the prequel.
It wasn't bad.
I love the original, but I really do like the prequel. It was fun. It was different. It was different again. It gave us something we'd never seen before, a university for monsters, and training and so forth. So it worked off the same premise as the first one and delivered something different, but it still delivered the fun. It still delivered freshness. It still delivered beautiful, wonderful animation. They brought back the same actors from the first one, which, you know, at that time just didn't happen. They would get a new cast for the sequel or the prequel. But in this one, they kept all the same people, which really was really fantastic.
Right. And they also introduced some new characters that you kind of wondered, you know, maybe because it was college and you weren't supposed to see them again for some reason. But there were some new characters introduced in here that you kind of wonder why were never in the first movie. I understand the movie was, the Monsters Inc. was first, 2001. Of course, it's like, they only had two characters to focus on. So maybe they would say like they got different jobs or something. But in here, they had new characters in here that were other monster trainees, and they were kind of like Mike in a way where they had a sort of like underdog class where the monsters that didn't look scary physically, they would go and get education in something else. Mm-hmm. They couldn't scare monsters because they couldn't scare kids because they weren't scary. So they put them in places where the non-scary monsters were studied, and schools didn't kind of deal with them. And it sort of had this thing where they were scary in another way, which I guess the parallels that, okay, they can't do this, but they can do this in an even better way, and it still showed the talents, which I think was the purpose of Monster University. It's built on the biggest, strongest, scariest monsters are the elite. They got the football players and stuff and everything like an 80s college movie.
Right.
And then you have your little nerd group that is the underdogs and the people that are like, ugh, and they have to prove that they can be monsters and scary like them, just in a different, more tactical way.
Mm-hmm. In addition to Billy Crystal, John Goodman, and Steve Buscemi, you had some really top-notch talent. Helen Mirren, the incomparable Helen Mirren, as the dean.
Yes, she's probably the most memorable character in the prequel.
And you had Sean Hayes as Terry. You had Alfred Molina as Professor Knight.
Yeah.
And we had Bobby Moynihan, who we didn't know, of course, yet, from We Bare Bears, as one of the voices of one of the monsters.
Right.
And
you had Nathan Fillion and Tyler Labine.
Hunk!
Yes!
So I think both of these movies were destined to not only be memorable, but to become classics. Monsters, Inc., I think, will forever be popular. Just give a kid a copy of Monsters, Inc. to watch on DVD. They're going to fall in love with it. The only problem for them is they won't have the merchandising, all the things that went along with it. Mm-hmm. For quite a while, long after 2001, this movie stayed popular and in the forefront for at least a decade, at least. You said Monster, Inc., everyone knew who you were talking about, no matter what age. Everyone has seen this movie. Mm-hmm. And everyone had bought this movie. And Pixar gave a gift to children and to adults and to the animation world of something that's, again, is memorable, unique, and truly will never be forgotten. Mm-hmm. I can't see another Monsters, Inc. being made. Maybe they'll surprise us like they did with Toy Story. Every time I thought they couldn't do better or they couldn't live up to the first one, each sequel did it. Mm-hmm. And so maybe they will surprise us and do that with Monsters, Inc. We'll have to see.
Right.
If you've seen Monsters, Inc., which we know you have, let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, if you've seen Monsters University, did you think it was a well-done prequel, or would you rather, like Rascal, to have seen a sequel? Let us know what you think in the comments below as well.
And we better mention one last thing is that there will be a web series on Disney Plus titled Monsters at Work, which I guess will be the spinoff. They don't know if it's going to be about Mike and Sulley, or is it going to be about other monsters in this universe, but that's going to be definitely something interesting to watch if you have Disney Plus.
Well, Phoenix will let us know all about that.
Right.
So, thanks for watching.
Oh, and be sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get updates on future podcasts and multi-pause videos.
Yes.
I'm Ask Entertainment.
And I'm Mom Entertainment.
Have a toontastic day.
Peace.
And reporters sitting flashing lights, trying to walk around, man, who the hell are you? What you wanna do? My man, it's on you. Man, it's on you. Hit her in my dreams, she was my queen. A castle in the mountaintops, rivers and streams. Plucking sunlight from the sky in my pocket, giving